Welcome to the Wellness in Asheville podcast, where we shine a light on the people, practices, and places that make this city one of the most inspiring wellness communities in the country. I'm your host, Travis Richardson, founder of Be Well Asheville, your local news source for health, wellness, and community events.
You know, as you walk through life, it's sometimes the case that you meet people that have great credentials, and other times you find people that have a lot of wisdom. And if you're really lucky, you find somebody that has both. Josephine Spilka has practiced classical Chinese medicine and Buddhist meditation for over 25 years. Her work is rooted in the 5-channel system, herbal medicine, and the ancient lineages of self-cultivation that have quietly shaped some of the most enduring longevity traditions on Earth. She is the founder of Essence Presence, and whether you are navigating illness, refining your clinical practice, or following the plants, her aim is the same: to help you choose the medicine that is true for you. And today, we're going to talk about a few concepts that most of us have never encountered in a Western medical office. And once you understand these concepts, you'll never think about aging in the same way. One of those concepts is Jing. And if you haven't heard of Jing before, it is essentially your vital essence. It is inherited, it can be cultivated, but it is a limited resource. And when you run out of Jing, you run out of life. So the idea of eating a proper diet, getting proper movement, making sure you're not overeating, maybe even doing some intermittent fasting, for example, all help with Jing. So without further ado, let's hear it from Josephine Spilka.
Okay, so we have Josephine Spilka on the show today, here to talk to us about all things essence, classical Chinese medicine, longevity, and much, much more. Welcome to the show, Josephine.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Yeah. So for somebody who's never heard of you, how about you just start with giving us the 1-minute version of who you are, what you practice, and the thread that runs through all of it for you?
Oh, yeah, that's lovely. I have been practicing classical Chinese medicine for 30 years. My focus at this time is on process at the level of the essence, which includes a cancer diagnosis, autoimmune disease, and creativity and evolution, individual self-cultivation, things that are of great interest to me, for myself, and for anyone interested. So
You just said the word essence. What does that even mean at the level of essence?
yeah, so essence, also you could think of it like DNA. So it's the basic material that we have when we're born, like when we're conceived. Um, Essence is the stuff that holds our whole structure together in the marrow of the bones, in the pulp of your teeth. It's the deepest, you could say, the deepest layer of the body.
Okay, and I know we'll talk a lot more about that too. We'll get into some terms that describe that. So let's start with understanding the difference classical Chinese medicine and versus even like traditional Chinese medicine,
Right.
and what you practice.
Yeah, good question. So classical Chinese medicine, by definition, is a version of Chinese medicine that relies on the classics, and by definition, those are probably books that are more than 500 years old. In my case, most of those books are thousands of years old, like the Yellow Emperor's Classic of Internal Medicine, or the Nanjing, the Classic of Difficulties, and those two are related, and that they're commentaries on some of those things. In traditional Chinese medicine, which was created by the communists in China, they wanted to simplify and streamline the medicine so that it could be more available to more people. And so that effort was made in the middle of the 20th century. And what they did was they took kind of pieces of all the textbooks that had accumulated and sort of mishmashed it together into some kind of recipes for various types of problems. And that is what is mostly taught here in the US. So when Chinese medicine started to come to this country, it came with the people who had been educated in the last half of the 20th century. So they weren't familiar with these classics because at that time that wasn't even being taught there. Now there's been a resurgence. In the last 20 years, there's been a big resurgence of people interested in that, the older styles of medicine, but it still isn't taught much anywhere. It's taught very, very rarely. Here in Asheville, one of the only schools that has taught it.
Yeah, why is that? What is it about classical Chinese medicine versus the traditional form?
I think the outcomes are way better, but I'm biased. But it is a more complex system in some ways, because in traditional Chinese medicine, we only ever talk about the primary channels most of the time. And in the classical styles, there are 5 different channel systems one can work with. So they cover the different layers of the body. It's in some ways requires a deeper understanding that in the education that came initiated in this country was never that deep. So, it wasn't, it was competing with Western medicine styles. So they tried to parallel that, especially in the last half of the 20th century. It was important to the Chinese to kind of come up to par. And so there's nothing wrong with the primary channels. They're great, but they're really only one aspect of the larger body of wisdom that's there in the classical styles. So, and probably
Yes.
because the people who came from China to this country were not educated in those styles. So that meant when they started schools in this country, they started them in the TCM styles, in the traditional Chinese medicine styles, because that's how they were educated. So it wasn't until people began to teach from those classics that people began to understand there was more to the medicine.
As I understand it too, classical Chinese medicine is a little more esoteric, and there's things in it that the Western mind, even the Western practitioner, wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, I think that's one way you could talk about it. There's a lot of nuance to the classical styles, and part of that, I don't know how to describe it. Part of that is that in the traditional Chinese medicine, most of it is recipe style. As in, if you have a headache, do this. If you have a backache, do this. In the classical styles, we don't make any of that assumption. Every treatment is tailored to the person in that moment, in their current condition. So it's a much more precise way of diagnosis in a way. It's tailored to that person in that moment. So what was good for somebody else wouldn't be good for that person in that moment. Well, like if you open the book and it says headache, and you take the recipe and then you try it and it doesn't work, you wouldn't know if you did it that way, you wouldn't understand what the problem was if it didn't work. If you do it the classical way, then you can find where the problem is in your thinking.
Yeah, I have an example of that. I had acupuncture done on my son when he was younger, and the Western trained clinician or acupuncturist, he was a medical doctor who went to get a 100-hour certificate or something to do acupuncture. And so my son had like digestive issues. And so every treatment, he just would put a bunch of needles in his stomach. And I mean, maybe that was the right thing. I don't know, but it seemed very like a protocol. And he never had much benefit at all from that. He did feel a sense of energy and movement in his belly. He did feel that there was something going on there. But we went to another guy who was classically Chinese, medically trained, and he was doing stuff that had made no sense to me at all as to how that would help, what he was doing would help his digestive system. So, meaning he was doing things on other parts of the body, organs and things that were not at all associated in my Western brain.
Yeah, exactly. So, because in our way of thinking, you're of a piece. You can't separate your hands and feet from your head. They're connected. So it's possible to use hands, feet, head to treat your stomach. And but that's true. That's true in both styles. I think the difference is the way they're applied. So in the TCM field, the way those people are trained, it's applied very much like Western medicine, like a pharmaceutical prescription. Here you have this. Where in the classical styles, it's applied much more like, I don't know, maybe more like psychotherapy. Like there's much more discussion about what is true for that person. And so it becomes a more precise form of treatment, which many people is much more effective. Which isn't to say that some of those recipes don't work. Sometimes they do in TCM.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, quick break before we jump back in. If you're enjoying this conversation and want to go deeper, I want to give you something. We put together a free download with exclusive discounts from all of our season 1 wellness experts. Places like Drip Sauna, Asheville Salt Cave, Still Point Wellness, and lots of others. Real discounts from real local practitioners here in Asheville, completely free just for being a listener. And here's the thing. Once you grab it, you are going to get to be first to know about some pretty exciting things that we have coming up, including a brand new longevity course we are building specifically for this community. And I think you're just going to love it. Just head over to bewellasheville.com/podcast. Check this episode's show notes, and inside will be a link to grab your discounts. Now let's get back to the conversation. Let's talk more about this idea of essence, or Jing, as it's called in Chinese medicine. And you've said, I don't know if it was on your website that I saw this, or in talking to you, but you liken it to kind of a genetic blueprint, is what I had in my notes. And so, not like identical to DNA, but it's something of a map of a person, like of their, a blueprint of their beingness, I guess you would call it. Yeah. How do you explain that parallel, and how do you explain it to, again, that Western mind that doesn't understand things they can't see?
Well, they do actually understand. See, they just don't know how to explain it. And that's different, right? So everybody knows what it feels like to feel at home or comfortable in your body, right? You know when you're not at home. Maybe that's the easiest way to say it. You know when you're not at home. And when you are at home, it means that you and your essence are in communication. So your essence is like holding the space for you to be you in this life, right? So what happens when you work with that level is that you open up more and more of your own being to you. So this enables you to make better choices. It enables you to feel stronger, more clear, more confident, and more at home in yourself. And that, to me, is invaluable. Really, almost, I don't know of anything else that can do that for you, right? Because, talk therapy can approach that. Sometimes we say to reach the essence, you need vibration, resonance. So that's like music, dancing. When you move your limbs, you create a wave of resonance, or talking will create a wave, a sound wave. So any of those things can penetrate the essence and actually move you, right? Literally move you like a ripple through the water. And so acupuncture is one way, but it's not the only way. But it's important understanding that you have such a thing. When you were conceived, it came into your body as the stuff from which you grew. You grew from that stuff. So therefore it's in every cell, everywhere in a way. The echo of that essence, that is you. It's like the essence of you.
Mm.
And so that's pretty precious.
Yeah, that's a thing. And so some other things too. So around this idea of expansion and contraction, we all obviously know, you know, everything is essentially a wave. And so with Jing, I suppose that that's similar. And as we age, we have this different way of being, right? We have this energy distribution, and it changes as we age. Can you talk about how the aging process changes our Jing, our energy, and what that looks like?
Well, so to do that, I think it's good to sort of remind people they probably already know about yin and yang, right? So yin is the force that is moving inward, right? That consolidates. And yang is the force that moves outward. It's hot and light, and yin is cold and dark and still. So yang is the activity, yin is the stillness. So what happens over the course of our lives, we are obviously doing more and more activity. So we have less and less yin sometimes, especially if we spend a lot of time looking at the computer, which is a yin eater. Um, and what that means is that if you run out of yin resource, yin, that stillness, that quiet, that water is the source of everything. It's like saying the ocean is where all life came from. It's the same in your body. The ocean of yin is where you came from. So as you spend that, as you get down to the bottom, you could say you gain wisdom, you gain enlightenment, we hope. You know more, but your physical form is less. So over the course of your lifetime, when you die, your essence is at its lowest point. When you're born, it's at its highest point. And as you go through life doing the things you do, you spend, you could say, your essence, your yin over time to gain wisdom, to gain proficiency and clarity and wakefulness in your life. So by the time you die, in theory, you die peacefully because you've become pure wisdom.
Hmm, I
Right?
like that.
Yeah. Right?
That's an
So you're
optimistic.
not
Yeah,
hanging on to anything at that point.
yeah,
Ideally speaking, ideally
right.
speaking. And all those challenges through your life that come from the level of the essence, meaning we have structural challenges, right? Our teeth get worse, our eyes get worse, our backbones get worse, our joints degrade. Over time, all of those indications that your essence is declining are opportunities to mine, as in go in and reckon with your own essence as to what you need. If you want to stay alive longer, you might like to do that. If you don't mind, if you don't care, you keep spending what you've got in the bank, that's no problem. Like, there's no value judgment about it. It's up to you. It's your choice, right? So,
Right,
but you
right.
can't make that choice unless you have sort of met your own essence fair and square. If you don't know what you've got, then you spend crazily, maybe, or you don't spend at all. Some people don't spend at all. They're busy. They're busy conserving all the time, and then they never have any fun, and they never understand what happened. So the whole idea is that you get to choose,
Hmm.
which is beautiful too.
Yeah, yeah, and I know that you work a lot with. Uh, I think you even just mentioned on right before this call, working with you've got various cancer patients that you've worked with in the past, and I guess how do you understand that disease in terms of this idea of essence or Jing? Like, what does that look like?
So the cancer process, which I like to call it a process, and I like to say I work with people who have a cancer diagnosis because I don't like to label them always as being patients.
Mm.
So this is an effort of mine. But undeniably, the cancer process takes place at the level of the essence in the cell. There's no two ways about that. Like, everybody agrees. It's a replication of cells. Therefore, it takes place at the level of the essence. So the question always is, how are you allocating your resources? If you are involved with the cancer diagnosis, it's always a question of resource. And it goes back to what we were just talking about, that if you spend those resources, you aren't aware that you're spending them, then the cells that have become injured through time, because they are innocent, they become injured innocently. It's not like they're malevolent. They just get injured and then they replicate. And because they are injured, they make what we call a malignancy. But essentially, they're operating out of the range of your awareness. So they're over here doing their thing. And part of the way I work with people who've received that diagnosis is to help them become aware of the things that they might be doing that are contributing to accelerating the process, and how one might slow it down or even stop it or even reverse it. Because it's been shown, and I know this was on your list of topics, there's been a ton of epigenetic research that says you can take a cancer cell and put it back into a healthy environment and it will return to healthy functioning. So that's an amazing thing that I love to remind people about. And that is true of so much. The community of the body is designed to create health. Your body moves
Mm.
toward health naturally. So what we really have to do is remove the things that obstruct us from being healthy, as opposed to change ourselves.
Wow, that is crazy to think. It's not crazy, that's the wrong word. It's powerful to think about the fact that we can change our environment, and if we can change our environment, then the cells operating in such said environment can also change. And
Isn't it
so
amazing?
oh, it's very empowering. I mean, like, if we just talked about that alone, it would be all we would need to say. It says everything, doesn't it?
It does. And we are an emanation of our environment. We are heaven and earth. This is just one of the basics of Chinese medical thinking. Your body is this ongoing flow between heaven and earth. So therefore, the conditions in the heavens and the conditions in the earth affect you. I was just speaking with a colleague the other day who wrote a book about climate change and Chinese medicine. It's fascinating. And again, he's talking about this very same idea, that your body, it's a little cosmos, and the conditions in it reflect the conditions in the environment around you. So tending to that, actually changing those conditions, can be extraordinarily powerful and so far-reaching, vast. If each
So
of
I
us
know,
that.
yeah, yeah. In terms of meditation, kind of clinical use for meditation for the people that you see, or is it just something that you practice yourself?
It myself and have for 40 years, but there is a lot of evidence that it's clinically useful. In fact, recently I was listening to Huberman Lab, and a conversation with Richie Davison, who helped write, it's called what is it called? It's the book about emotions and the brain and meditation. Anyway, there's a lot of evidence that um, even 5 minutes a day of meditation practice, basically resting the mind, can improve your health dramatically and improve your longevity, specifically improve your longevity. And they've done massive amounts of studies now due to the Dalai Lama and his efforts, and the not the Institute for Noetic Sciences, the other one. It's not popping into my brain right now, but there have been many conferences between the Buddha Dharma people and the scientists about how these types of practices work. In my own work with people, I specifically introduce two types of practice usually. One is the practice of resting the mind, which, though it sounds restful, usually isn't in the beginning because minds are pretty crazy, my own included. So it's not a failing to have an active mind. It's a question of how you work with it, and the way I work with it is to uh, help people understand the value of finding the choice points. Because to go back to what I was saying earlier, it's that makes the difference between a method that works for you and one that doesn't. If you know you are choosing it, your awareness, your ability to know that, it makes all the difference in the outcome. And there's again, many scientific studies to support that. And I don't force the practice on anyone, but I offer it to everyone. And the other style of practice that I offer most often these days is the compassion practices. And the practice is related to Guan Yin, the goddess of compassion from the Chinese culture. She's also known as Tara in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, or Avalokiteshvara is Bodhisattva of compassion. So those practices are really about allying yourself with who you actually are, which is not who you think you are, which is, that's a tough one to explain to people. But once you experience it, it's very liberating to realize that you have a whole life of experience that is there for you. That you don't have to rely on concept to find that. So.
Right. What do you wish that researchers knew about what Chinese medicine is known for, thousands of years?
Well, what they've known for thousands of years and practiced is what we call the practice of tonification. Cultivating health through doing the things on a daily basis that support health, as opposed to clearing pathology. So in the West, everything is about getting rid of things or clearing pathology. So there's very little research and very little attention paid to the things that one might do more and more these days, though, I have to say, walk for 15 minutes, meditate for 5 minutes, these kinds of things that actually will promote health. The probably the biggest thing, and again, it's hard to do this research because they would have to do it over a long period of time, is that the stillness or the quiet that we don't get in our modern culture is really vital to nourishing longevity. So, time off the screen, time in the natural world, time with yourself without necessarily being in conversation or doing an activity, but actually just being. This is vital, but it's hard to research that. And it's also hard to get people to do it. Take away their phones and
Yeah. Oh my.
then they feel.
Oh no. Yeah, not my phones. Well, let's turn our attention a little here now to essential oils. You do work with essential oils. How does that work with all the other things that you're doing? You're obviously doing acupuncture. You do meditation. You're instructing with that. Where do oils come in?
Yeah, so essential oils are the essence of a plant. So they contain Jing, they contain essence. So I was immediately drawn to them as substances that I would like to use. They're kind of condensed yin. They're made from a steam, most often a steam distillation. They can be made in other ways. But what they do is condense the most powerful part of the plant into this precious little bit of substance that only requires 1 drop or less to do amazing things. And their aroma activates our senses. So what's beautiful about that is that when you activate the senses, your capacity to change your perception is immediately present. So that is a very, very handy thing, right? So when I want somebody to meet themselves, meet their own essence, when I use an essential oil, immediately their essence is resonating with that oil and their senses are open. That's the perfect conditions under which you can learn about yourself and learn about your world. So it's perfect.
I'm curious, what kinds of oils do you use? Are they traditional, like, ones that we might have heard of, lavender and the like, or are they other
Yes.
kinds?
So until recently, there weren't essential oils made from Chinese herbal medicinal herbs. So when I began to study with the essential oils, which was 25 years ago, um, all that was available was the ones that you're familiar with, the eucalyptus, lavender, tea tree, clary sage, myrtle. Um, so most of the time and most of the teaching that I've done, I'm using those very familiar uh, plants in the essential oil form, but I'm talking about them in Chinese medicine terms. So that means I can talk about eucalyptus entering the lungs. And though people think of that because they know that smelling eucalyptus makes them feel they can take a deep breath. But what they don't know is that it might also clear a cough or phlegm, or that it might help with grief and letting go, which are all things that come through the Chinese medical model. So it's
Well, that
very
seems real.
different from what you usually find about essential oils in that way.
Well, yeah, it sounds very complimentary, and actually somebody who understands the organ systems as they relate to the Chinese medical model in this way could use essential oils from a very different perspective, I think, than somebody who is just trained on Western modalities, because you wouldn't think to target maybe an organ that was weak in Jing or Qi or something like that, or too much. You would know which oils to
Yeah.
uh,
So,
balance
for
those things.
example, we use seed oils. Seeds are the essence of a plant, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
seed that will give birth to another plant, just like the one it came from. So, the seed oils, again, going to nourish the essence very strongly. And, of course, different seeds resonate with different organ systems. Growing, depends how they grow the plant. So, anyway, it's great because it's just, again, more precise, which I would say
Yeah,
true about the classical thinking always.
gotcha. Well, what is it? So, with all that we've discussed, what does it look like for somebody to come see you for the first time? What What's your process?
I offer what I call a blueprint for change, which is usually 2 to 2.5 hour conversation where uh, I'm taking everything that's on their mind and depends. If they come in person, I can take their pulses and look at their tongue. But even if they don't, particularly if they have diagnoses from a Western doctor that they are finding difficult to work with, I will write up a report from that conversation, usually 10 to 15 pages, mapping out possible treatments, my thinking, my logic for why I think certain things might be good and other things might not. I will cover both acupuncture treatment, lifestyle, diet, exercise, meditation, all of that. And I will make recommendations. So at present, I don't do what most acupuncturists do, which is that most acupuncturists see people on an hourly basis, which is wonderful. Glad they're there. But for me right now, I see people only on a retreat setting. So they come for 1 day up to 18 days, depending on
Oh,
what they need. And they get all their meals and they get workshops and they get treatments and all of that.
that's amazing. That's a totally different model, but I really like that because it feels to me like that you do so much. There's so much healing that can happen just by being there,
Well,
with
being away
you.
from home, being in a different environment, just like we were
Yeah.
saying, it's so hard to make change when you're in your habitual environment. So by putting somebody in a new environment and letting them relax. They actually have the opportunity to make change they never could make at home.
Yeah. Right.
So
And as part of that, who's your typical person coming to see you? Like, what presentations or conditions do people come in with?
and they have a cancer diagnosis or an autoimmune diagnosis. So I've
Okay.
a lot of breast cancer, prostate cancer, lymphoma, thyroid cancer, skin cancer, ovarian cancer, colon cancer. Anyway, lots of different kinds of cancer, and also autoimmune diagnosis like rheumatoid arthritis or lupus, or multiple sclerosis. I have treated that condition. So all of those are responsive to treatment at the level of the essence, which is what I prioritize.
Mm. Yeah. So to use the body's natural systems to work with the person as opposed to against them. What's the most if you were to choose the most important thing for somebody to let go of in lieu of working with you or reconsider? I guess the reason I'm asking that is if you're used to like a Western medical system, it's very different to come get treatment. Like what does somebody have to do to kind of let go of thoughts that there are, you know what I'm saying? Like to come get this kind of treatment from you, what is it? What do they got to let go of?
To work with anyone who's willing to investigate. So there's no precondition. However, I would say that the main thing is to be willing to work with your own body directly. Like if all you want is somebody to take things away from you, then this is not the best place, because what's required to do Chinese medicine properly is for somebody to be engaged, to participate. That
Mhm.
might mean you change your diet. It might mean you change your sleep hours. It might mean you change your exercise. It could mean any of those things in order to support the treatment. But if you're not willing to do that, it's probably not going to be a good fit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I will work with people. I have had people on retreat who've just received radiation, people who've received chemotherapy, people who are taking medications. I am not afraid to work with people who have chosen to do that. Unless they don't want to, obviously, then they're not going to come and see me. So I mostly feel like, unfortunately, and this is an aside in a way, for processes at the level of the essence, I think teaching people how to meet themselves is the best prevention there is.
Mm.
For the diseases or the processes that happen on the surface, like COVID, for example, Chinese medicine has a lot to offer. But the cosmology, the way we think about it, is so different that it's hard for people to, shift into that gear. But I've worked with so many people, teaching them how to take care of themselves in a different way and keep themselves well. So,
Mm.
the upside of it, it's a lot of work up front. This was my colleague and I had the one who wrote the climate change book. We had the same conversation because he's also involved in a study with Chinese medicine and long COVID, which in his opinion is related to the climate. And he was saying that the conditions inside someone's body and the conditions outside the body, and, that basically we can teach people how to be well
Mm.
under a lot of duress. Like COVID was a huge, huge stress across the globe for everyone. And there's so much to offer there, not only for longevity, but for like staying healthy in
Right.
in grave conditions, which are going to contribute to your longevity. Right. So
Right.
that's very important also.
Yeah. Super important. And then you have a class coming up, right? June 20th. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So that course is called Design and Destiny. And it's about self-cultivation, creativity, and evolution using the essential oils. I'm going to introduce some of the Chinese herbal medicinal oils. I'm going to talk about everything from a classical Chinese medicine point of view. So it's best suited for people who already understand Chinese medicine, or to some degree can absorb that framework. But I will teach whatever part of it I need to help people understand the topic. But it's basically what we were talking about, using the essential oils to work with the essence. And again, promote your own creativity and your own evolution, which in order to evolve, we say in Taoist thinking that you have a body because you have lessons to learn in this life. And if you don't learn them, you'll probably be back, which everyone may not believe, but it doesn't matter. You can still use the essential oils to sort of extract the essence, extract the lessons that you need to learn to stay alive as long as you like.
I love that. Yeah, that's a positive, very, very positive message.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I invite the listeners to check that out. I think they can find that probably more on your website. Where do you see Chinese medicine, classical Chinese medicine, given that, like in the future, given that traditional Chinese medicine is sort of the mainstream, is the classical form growing in popularity? Is it moving a little more towards common practice, or like how does that?
Well,
How do you see that in 10 years from now?
I think it's growing. It's growing because slowly but surely, there's a small handful of us trying very hard to help people understand the value in taking the deep and longer view, which is only possible if you have the classics. It's, as I said, TCM was created to address the sort of emergency of the moment in the last half of the 20th century, the epidemics that occurred and the changes in the population. But the classical thinking has been around for 4,000, 5,000 years, and it is really focused on how we can be well, stay well, and honor our very essence. Time.
Yeah. Okay. Last question, and then we'll give people a chance to find out how they can reach you after this episode here. Is that, here's the question. One piece of advice for somebody in midlife who senses they're kind of running on empty, they've got low energy, maybe they're not sleeping well, and they don't have any idea why. Like, what could they do? Aside from coming to see you, of course, which we recommend. What can they do?
There's two things. One is get your bare feet on the ground at least once a day for at least 5 minutes, and turn off your screens when it gets dark. Don't be looking at the computer, talk to a person, listen to music, get your eyes off that screen.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things I think would just improve your health dramatically.
Right. If nothing else, you would maybe sleep better, which would give you the energy to do everything else that matters. Like make smart choices when you eat, maybe have an ability to have energy to work out. Just like one thing like that could make all the difference.
Yeah. Get up in the morning, step outside, take in the sun, turn off the screens when the sun goes down. I think you'll be way better.
Totally. And for the listeners out there, we can reach Josephine. Her website's josephinespilka.com. That'll be in the show notes, of course. She's also on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We'll put all those links on there for everyone. And at this time, I just want to say thank you so much, Josephine, for the great conversation. There's lots more that we all can learn from you. You're a real asset to everyone in Asheville. And I do know that there's not a lot of people practicing like you do. You may be the only one actually that's doing classical Chinese medical retreats for treatment.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been delightful. It's one of my, favorite things to talk about in the world.
That was Josephine Spilka. And if this conversation landed somewhere quiet and deep, that's exactly where it was meant to go. The idea that how we age is tied to something as ancient and precise as our vital essence, aka Jing, and that the plants carry their own form of this vitality, and that we can consciously choose to cultivate and preserve what we have, that's not folklore. It is a living, clinical tradition, and Josephine is one of its most devoted practitioners, and we have her right here in Asheville. You can find Josephine at josephinespilka.com and follow her at retreats with Josephine and at the Nectar of Plants on Instagram. And until next time, be well.
Thank you for listening. You can catch the next episode while mountain biking around Bent Creek, chilling after yoga at the Asheville Community Yoga Center in Woodfin, or grabbing a sunset view from the Blue Ridge Parkway overlook. You can check out more Asheville wellness news and events and join our newsletter at bewellasheville.com. And as always, thank you for being the best part of our wellness community. And until next time, be well.